Hello and welcome again for the very first time to Senpai Noodles. I'm Leon, also known as Oliver, and hosting with us today we have Blake, Jason, and Zach. We are avid fans of anime who surveyed the podcasting landscape and saw a need for a show that was free of assumptions. We wanted to make a bi-weekly show that didn't talk over anyone's head about some series they hadn't seen and allowed our listeners to experience the shows with us. Being that this is the first episode, introductions are in order, so why don't we have each of our hosts give a short history of how they were introduced to anime, as well as a couple of their favorite picks.
Alright, hi, I'm Blake. I would definitely say that I was introduced through Oliver, mostly when I was younger. And with our first series we ever watched there was Neon Genesis Evangelion, and as much as that was a crazy and fun show to start off with first, it was awesome, and I've loved anime ever since. With my favorite picks, it's really hard to pick from such a vast majority of awesome shows, but my favorites would definitely have to be Steins Gate, Rurouni Kenshin, and Psycho Pass, probably. Those three are definitely some of my top favorites.
Okay, hi, I'm Jason. I started watching Naruto in 7th grade, still watching it. Once Oliver figured that out, towards the beginning of college, he introduced me to Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood and Neon Genesis Evangelion, and I just haven't stopped since then. As far as some of my favorites, of course, Naruto. If you're looking for shorter ones I really like Attack on Titan and Death Note.
Hi, I'm Zach. Introduced to anime, depends. Are you calling Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Pokemon an anime? Because if so, I've been a fan of anime for quite a while.
And the rest of us just lied.
If not, it's definitely my college roommate, Oliver, who suggested we watch this show called Air Gear, and he doesn't get to pick anime anymore.
Hold on. I dispute that.
My favorite show, probably, or two, SAO and Fairy Tail. I gotta say, it's probably a tie between those two.
Alright, well, I'm Oliver. As you heard, anime is very infectious. Infect your friends. I was introduced to anime in the early 2000s when I was in elementary school. My sister was into anime at the time, and we would come home after school and watch Toonami on Cartoon Network. The first shows I was ever really exposed to were Gundam Wing and Sailor Moon. The first show I really experienced, though, like from beginning to finish, would be Evangelion, and I saw Death Note just as it finished coming out in Japanese. For my favorite shows, my favorite anime anything ever is Princess Mononoke, because it has everything. Evangelion is a really good pick, though I've yet to find an ending that I enjoy. And originally Death Note, but now I think I've replaced that with Code Geass, just because it has a lot of the same elements as Death Note, but I like the mind games they play a little more. So that's my story. Alright, so each episode we're going to pick a new show and we will discuss it in its entirety. It's advised that you watch the series before listening to each episode, as it will be fraught with spoilers, so here's your warning now. This week we've chosen Death Note, which is available on Netflix and Hulu in both subbed and dubbed, so go watch it. Death Note is a series about a notebook that is dropped into the human world where any name written in the book will cause the person to die. So, let's kick off the discussion and with who you liked and didn't like and why.
Out of all the characters, there wasn't one I hugely found myself bonding with or finding I just loved to death, but probably my favorite out of the entire show is definitely L. What I really liked about him is crazy as he may seem at times, is just how awkward and how could I put this? Sometimes he feels down to earth with a lot of the people he can be with, and especially when that comes into play during the last two episodes, how he just tries to get into Light's head more, and how he is coming within himself. Oh, that is awful. Cut that. Oh my god. I'm trying to word this in a way because I found the love for him in the episode right before he died.
He's trying to get into his head and onto those feet.
When he had his bromance with Light?
Oh yeah.
Something like that. He just became more human.
started washing people's feet.
Mm.
He's like Jesus.
They exchanged glances. There was a love there. Connection was made.
So I gotta say, like, well, just like he seemed more human in the last few episodes before he ended up dying, and I don't know. I just whenever I never had like a big compassion, like, oh, I don't want him to die. When Light was trying to plan for it, I was always kind of like, go for it, kill him, Light. But when I saw he seemed more human in the last few episodes, and I really figured out like I actually enjoyed him probably more than anybody else because he just added so much personality, even though he had like zero. He added so much personality to it in the very end right there to himself that I just made him more lovable in my opinion.
Alright, so to contrast that, my favorite was Nier. I'm just kidding.
No.
No. I enjoyed Ryuk just because he doesn't care.
For sure.
He doesn't care anyway. He just wants a good show. And so like all this is going on and you're like really like in the moment, you're like, this is high stakes, and like, oh man, who's gonna die right now? And then Ryuk's just like chilling.
Yeah, he definitely adds like huge bit of, I don't know, it's like he adds the perfect bit of comedy to that show that I just enjoy.
He's the only person in the entire show who's never at risk of dying.
Yeah, pretty much.
Because he just doesn't care.
He's so funny and lovable, though. There's no doubt that he's just perfect for the show in every way.
I also like Matsuda. I think Matsuda is really my favorite. I like Ryuk, but I like Matsuda's character the best. Just especially at the end, you get redemption for the coffee intern. Like no one's taking him seriously the whole time, and he's like, oh no, I'm gonna be the one who pulls the gun. It's gonna be me.
He was relatable in so many ways to anybody else that could just be like, just in general, just starting anything in life. Just learning the ropes of everything, and just like, when he's compared to everybody, he just seems so little.
That's what makes him so lovable.
Even though the show went on for like 8 years, he was still the like guy that seemed like he was in his first 2 weeks up until the very end.
Pretty much.
True, that is true.
Zach, who would you say your favorite character was?
Oh, I don't know that I necessarily have a favorite character.
I'm kind of in the same boat.
But if I had to pick a favorite character, it's definitely the potato chip in episode 8. That guy was awesome, man. I tell you, his sacrifice was well noted.
Played the part to a T.
But for realsies, though, after going back and watching the show, I don't hate Nier as much as I used to. And going back and watching it again, it was a lot more of the characters were more annoying than I remembered. But I'd probably have to side with Oliver and say Ryuk on this one. The comedic relief that he brings to the show is unmatched and definitely needed.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I really liked L. I also really liked Ryuk because like the whole time, like Oliver mentioned, the stakes are always really high, and he's just chilling in the back waiting for his next apple, and like he's entertained by everything. That's all he wants from it. But the first time I watched the show, I really liked Aizawa, which was the guy from the task force that had an afro that then got it cut by the end of it. Towards the end, he kind of took over leadership of the task force, like except for Light, obviously. But
I believe he becomes a deputy director after the series as well.
I think you're right. I just like the fact that he was able to step away from this investigation, put his family first, but when his friends really needed him, he was back. So I don't know. I remember really liking that part. So Ryuk or Aizawa, I guess.
Something I liked about the show is that Light is definitely the villain, but they don't make you hate him. And that's I think very hard to do.
That's so true.
I mean, because he has almost no redeeming qualities. He uses people. He doesn't really treat anyone nicely. He has a god complex.
And for most of the anime, you're still rooting for him.
Yeah, or at least you're not like, wow, this guy is like, I want to see them rip his guts apart. Like,
right.
Yeah, I mean,
at the very least, you want him to succeed just so that you get to see how.
Yeah.
Or get to see it more.
I mean, they also play it right into our minds about like how we think criminals are bad in a sense that, and then it plays into our complex of how we think people should be judged, and he plays into a lot of people. I mean, I don't think most people go around thinking like, oh, mass murders are really cool, that they deserve more respect and stuff like that. It's more that I don't know, it plays right into our brains kind of to make us seem that he's doing like this greater good.
Yeah, Ryuk actually hits on that at the start when Light says what he wants to do with the Death Note is to kill all the criminals in the world. And then Ryuk says, well, that means you'll be the only bad person left.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is really good, because I guess when most people, when they have that kind of power, you can take Yotsuba for that example, that they use it for money and power themselves, and not for, like, as if you want to term Light's vision as a greater good.
Well, I think Ryuk's kind of bringing up the point that no matter how you use it, there's no way to use it for good.
There's no way to get rid of all the evil in the world.
Well, even if you use it to get rid of evil, it still makes you a bad person, because you're just, in the end, it's murder.
Yes.
Yeah. So.
Not much ways around it, but I mean, the show definitely does eat away at what you think and stuff, and it likes to play right into your mind.
Mm-hmm.
It likes to stay a step ahead of you, too, every time. Because I remember when I first read the manga, that I didn't expect, like, when there were some changes coming through, that I did not expect stuff. Like, it came out of there, and it just totally fit right in, and it was like, wow, that makes total sense, and, like, I could never have expected this to come. So it was amazing writing, in my opinion. I loved the writing, everything about it.
I mean, the plot's, like, super detailed, and, like, even if you look at, like, the example of, like, the Death Note exchange in the woods.
And as much as we also, like, as we've discussed before, it just brings up, like how we try to tear little bits and pieces, see what we can find. It's just so well written. It's just hard to find stuff without bringing way right-wing stuff out there that it'd be really hard to really put in evidence to theories.
Mm-hmm. For the record, anyone who is confused by the exchange that they did in the woods, all it did was change which Shinigami was bound to which Death Note. That's all it did. So they also, on the note of the detailed plot, I noticed something when I was rewatching the series here, that there's this mirroring when Light and L first meet. L tests Light's logic by showing him the 3 pictures of notes that gave the message, L, do you know that Shinigami love apples? And in that puzzle, he says Light gets it wrong because he said there's a fake note, or he said there's a missing note, and it turns out that it's fake, but Light knows this. So L's kind of messing with Light by introducing false information when they first meet, and then right before L dies, towards the middle of the series, Light put the 2 fake rules in the Death Note, so now Light's turned it back on L and added false information to solve a logic puzzle. So it kind of matches the whole how they're opposites of each other, because L does it at the start, he does it at the end. It also kind of shows Light's transition into becoming L because he's playing the same tricks on him. So I thought that
I
was
never
really
put
cool.
those two together, but yeah, you're totally right.
It's really cool.
One thing I could kind of nitpick about it, I mean, this is very, very minor, but I think it's something else. But the first time when Light actually chills in the cafe without L there, Misa, when she walks in for the first time, she doesn't really, maybe it didn't show her from her perspective, but she didn't catch on that she couldn't see his time of death.
Light was out of view to her. There was a wall or a bush or something that she couldn't have seen him.
They said back to back, but I thought she walked in after he did. Like, she walked past him to go sit down.
No, the booth that they sit in is, like, way out of the way, so in order to get to it, you have to walk just to that booth. So she wouldn't have walked by them, if I remember correctly.
Well, Light had commented to Ryuzaki earlier about how that he specifically chose that booth because it was out of the way and you couldn't see it from any of the other booths.
Right.
And then
I was just saying she just walked in, because when you walk in, her field of view is able to see that through the door.
Oh, he's behind a wall, though.
Okay.
I don't know.
It's hard to remember the image, but I think she walks in from the left of the screen, and there's a wall that would be covering Light where he was sitting. And then she continues walking towards the right, and then walks what would be into the screen to sit down at her table. So I think Light was good there, but I'd have to rewatch it to check.
Plus, knowing Misa, she probably wasn't paying attention at the time.
This is
Even
very
if she could.
Don't bash her too hard. She was all right. She did her best. She did very good, though. She did very good. I mean, let's not attribute her to having low intellect, but I mean, it is fairly... I mean, it's not up to par, of course, with Light and LR, but when you're compared to geniuses, that's very hard.
Yeah, she's smarter than people give her credit for. Because she does do some good moves, especially like how she comes in contact with Light in the first place, but she also does some stupid things, too.
Let's be real, she's also the best actor of the show. She could play any role better than anybody else could.
I don't know, Mogi did a pretty good job.
Okay. There is Mogi and being her and...
I was going to say Matsuda, but...
No, Mogi, when he stepped up to the plate, that's another funny moment in the show, when he just cheers her on and yells for the first time when she goes in. Oh, that was great.
I mean, Matsuda is already just an upbeat person in general. Mogi's not. So he's just like, yeah, let's do this. And he's like, I hate this.
That's really laid back, and yeah.
If I'm correct, that is the first time he talks in the show, too.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
I don't know. But it's when they start making him into more of a main character.
Okay.
Because honestly, he showed up and I didn't even know he was on the task force.
He was always there in the background doing something important.
Mm-hmm.
But that's all we ever got. Like, L commented that he's been here the whole time and he's always been doing something important. And then Matsuda kind of feels bad.
I think I read something where the author had actually not intended Mogi to become a main character. So he didn't, up until that point, he didn't have a consistent character design for him. But obviously the story needed him to become more of a main character, so he did.
He was great. There's just the little bits and pieces of that show that just make me love it through their humor, through the seriousness as well.
I was going to say one thing that I really liked was how L figured out that Kira was in the Kanto region of Japan.
Yes.
Where he puts Lindell Taylor up on TV and has him call out Kira, and says that it's a worldwide broadcast, and then once Light kills him as Kira, he's like, oh yeah, by the way, this is in a very small region in Japan. We know where you live now.
That was Light's biggest mistake. In my opinion, I think that was his biggest mistake.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, hey, how do you know? But, I mean, Light challenge super aggressively like that triggers him pretty hard.
As far as something else that I really liked, I loved the first opener. It's to this day, it's still one of my favorite anime openers. The opposite of that, the second opener, is still one of my least favorite openers.
I was just about to talk about that. I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say that the second intro is awful.
Yeah,
I'm not a fan of it.
It's still one of my least favorite, but the first one, I really love that one.
There have been a lot of different shows that I've watched for music, and I love so much music that has come from anime. But this show, not just the openers, but the throughout the show, the music they have in the background and plays during very stressful times is pretty on point, and it really sets moods really great in the show.
Oh yeah, definitely. I actually used the soundtrack that's on. There's a video on YouTube that's just an hour and a half of the soundtrack. I listen to that while I study for tests and projects.
Do you pretend
great.
you write people's names down when you're solving math?
No, I need music that doesn't have words in it, and it's perfect. And they took the Attack on Titan one off. So
problem 14. Delete.
Keep spelling the teacher's name wrong, right? It's not working.
Oh, and then there's Sido. Sido, I don't like Sido. He's always, where's my death note? Me, I'm gonna die.
For 2 episodes.
Exactly. I don't know. I just don't enjoy him.
That actually doesn't do much. They're my least favorite characters about in the same boat, because I think my least favorite character is Mello, and he's only in 2 episodes as well, so I don't have much room to talk.
I don't like Nier.
I really don't like Nier.
Nier got better after I rewatched it.
He was better the second time I watched it. But I think the reason I hated him was he was trying to be L, and we already had that, and it was perfect, and you don't need to change it or replicate it. if they just brought him in and let him be his own character, I think it would have been better.
Yeah,
Well,
for sure.
It's really clear that Nier and Mello, they just divided up L's character into two people.
Yeah.
Because Nier is the antisocial and loves puzzles, and Mello is the willing to take some reckless actions and loves chocolate and loves sweets. So it's...
Yeah, you're right. It's
Don't
just
know.
I don't know. Once you separate him, he's not lovable anymore.
No.
So I don't know.
Let's see. So one thing I'd like to, I don't know, this is kind of out there, but one thing I noticed that the artist for this loves long hair.
Yeah.
Like, no joke. I mean,
Really?
it's like every pretty main character besides the cops all has long hair. Light, L,
Right.
Mellow, Nier. If you think about it, they all have long hair.
Wow.
I wonder
Light's
why.
hair just got longer.
I never understood why. I mean, Nier's the shortest, but I mean, it's still pretty long. I never understood his obsession with long hair. That's one. I mean, that's very nitpicky, but hey,
Maybe he liked drawing hair.
hey, y'all, power to him, man.
The guy that made Naruto liked drawing toes, so that's why they wear the stupid sandals.
I think Light's hair actually got longer in the last episode too, but I think that's
Yeah, it did.
mostly so they could show his eyes through his hair. Because it makes
Yeah,
you look
probably.
more evil.
Back to when Zach said that his least favorite character was Mello. I had a question about that. Mello had one other guy that helped him with his kidnapping,
Mm-hmm.
and he seems to be like really, really liked by people online. Was he in any other part of the anime, or is he just
No. Yeah,
is he
okay.
just there for that one section?
So he's more of a character in the manga. His name's Matt. He's the third smartest person at Whammy's house.
Okay.
And Mello, after the mafia dies, goes and gets him. And then you can look at, if you want to look at it this way, they split L up into three characters, because now Nier has half his personality, Mello has the other half, Matt got the looks, because he looks really similar to L. So, it's just, they just, Mello uses him to help him once he doesn't have any other means of investigating.
Okay.
So, meh.
Okay. I just remember like looking at Death Note stuff after I had watched it the first time, and everyone really, really liked Matt, and I barely remembered him, and I didn't know why he was so popular.
He didn't play much.
So
He didn't do much.
Because he looked the
Okay.
most like L.
okay.
That would be my guess. I don't know.
I just wanted to know if anyone else knew.
Secretly, he was the real L all along.
I'll get to it, but I have a theory about Nier that is along those lines. So I have some critiques of the story and or show in general, and I want to preface it with that I think this is a great anime. I think that this show is highly rewatchable and like a must-see for anyone who's getting into anime or has watched anime for a long time. If you're gonna get into anime, you should watch this show at least once.
Yeah.
So
It has a lot of good introducing points to what anime kind of has in store.
yeah, and it's just one of those that's so generally liked that if you don't, it's a good tell. Like if you watch this and maybe a couple other different landmark animes, I think it's a good indication whether or not a certain vast majority of anime is going to appeal to you.
Mhm.
I mean, it really doesn't hit the slice of life kind of style stuff, but it gets a lot of the
It
action.
doesn't have to.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to cover like every base, but it covers a lot, and it just opens the mind up.
Yeah, yeah. So, my first kind of question about the story is why, when Watari dies, why does he delete all of the data? Because they either suspect that Kira is on the task force. Well, there's two options. Kira's on the task force or he's not. If Kira's on the task force and it's Light like they think it is, he already has access to all of their information because he lives in the task force headquarters. And if Kira wasn't in there, then the people who are working on it who aren't L need that information. So I'm not sure. The only reason I can think of to delete it would be that if the information on Nier and Mello was on the database, but in that case, Light already had access to that information, and it'd be a huge risk to have their information on the database in the first place. So I just don't understand why he deletes all the information, because it seems like it's not hurting anyone to have it there, even if they're dead.
I do have a quick question about what he deleted, because like I know that L had him or told him that if he were to die, delete the information.
Mm-hmm.
But after L and Watery die, Light says that he is downloading the last of the information. So what Watery deleted, was that not what was stored in their headquarters, or?
I thought it was, but maybe not. Maybe it was.
I was confused on that.
Maybe it was everything that wasn't related to the case. Because he could have been at a different location.
Yeah. Also, I mean, one side of that, how you said that L or Light already had everything.
Mm-hmm.
One side of that he might have needed was, like you said, could have had stuff about Nier or Mello on it. But how would Light have really thought ahead? It could have been miscalculation on him of who would have really stepped up to the plate, even though L was like, I want you to be the next L after me. And Light's like, no, I still don't want to, even though he takes over. Light, he probably underestimated the people that could have followed him.
I don't think he expected anyone to replace L.
Right.
Yeah, so that's why he didn't look it up before.
Well, no, I get that, but why would you even keep the information there? Like, you shouldn't even have it on the database. So why, if it's not on the database, what's the purpose of deleting it? That was my question.
Keeping it maybe possibly in contact with Mello or Nier.
I don't know.
I mean, it is kind of a stretch. I understand what you mean by the only reason for it to really be on there is in case if Kira was really in the task force.
I don't know.
Right.
So,
well, wait, was Watery's office at the task force headquarters, or was it at a different location?
It might have been at a different location. He might have been wiping everything that's not related to the investigation.
It's in the task force one, because they walk down after he gets killed, yeah.
You're right.
They walk down into the servers, yeah. They go down there, and that's also where
he does.
Wow.
Ren died. Yeah.
Yeah. It's in the building, so I don't know. They deleted just for extra safety.
Anywho, that's not like a plot breaking point. I just thought it was weird.
But it's just we don't know what he deleted specifically, so we don't know of what importance or why he did.
Well, my guess would be why he did it is in the event that Kira wasn't part of the task force and had the means to break into that office and then have all of the information that the task force had, it'd be a precaution to get it all out of his hands.
That makes sense.
Him being already a part of the task force kind of just made it a moot point, but it was still protocol, and L, being the kind of guy who considers every possible angle, would also consider, and I mean, he said throughout the show multiple times, there's only a 2% chance that Light is actually Kira, right? So, while still being his main suspect and letting him in on the task force, you have to consider the other 98%.
Okay.
That's a very good point.
By deleting everything that could be stolen by someone else, he then trusts the remaining members of the task force to figure it out with what they already knew.
Right. I mean, It's not like everyone in that room hadn't already
memorized everything.
Like most of, if not all of the information that were on those servers. The only thing that could have been on there would have been information about the house and Nier and Mello, but if they didn't already have an idea that those people existed and to look them up, they probably weren't going to go through and be like, oh, hey, what's this file that says do not open about Nier or whatever? Who's this Nier kid? I'm never going to see him.
Episode 26, what's that?
Right.
So, here's another little thing. I wonder if here's stipulation, wondering about something. I wonder, because we know we kind of know L's last name with Lalite, and I wonder if he ever really changed his first name to be legitimately L. And if you just wrote L Lalite in the death note, I wonder if that would have potentially killed him. But I don't know. It probably goes off of birth name, though.
I don't know what qualifies as a name, because, like, Linda L. Taylor works, but really first and last name is typically enough in the show.
Yeah.
So if you go legally change your name?
We don't know.
I don't think that changes it, because I don't think...
Okay.
Yeah. My guess would be your birth name, but really I have no evidence to believe one way or the
Yeah,
other
there
about
was.
that.
They never did anything about it, so I was just, it's one of those things I wondered about.
It just seems like an odd concept to me that a human law would change what a death
Right.
note, a supernatural item, how it would affect you.
Right.
So the ultimate Death Note counter is to change the name of your child the moment after he's born.
Yeah. I mean, think about it, because aliases don't work technically, and changing your name is an alias. Right.
I
So-
thought it would be hilarious if after Light picks up Rem's notebook, he opens it up to see what L's name was, and it was the name of that pop star that he gave him the first time he met him, and he's like, "I've known this whole time. Are you kidding me?" Because he never tries it.
DK Ryuga, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm surprised he didn't try it, because what were the consequences of it being wrong?
If you try,
He kills the...
No, you have to be thinking
yeah.
of the face.
yeah, he was worried that he'd accidentally
true.
kill the pop star. But if he wrote it wrong, one of the rules is if you write the name wrong 4 times.
4 times.
Yeah, I know, but
You've got 3 more chances,
I-
buddy. You can't afford not to take this chance.
I agree. But maybe Light thought differently. I don't know.
Maybe he was scared Light would accidentally picture the pop star's face in his mind while reading. He's like, "Oh no, I did it," and then he messed up.
Light's probably
He really likes his music.
well. There's a couple things. One, if the pop star and or L died immediately after meeting Light, that's probably pretty suspicious. And
Yeah.
the other thing would
Very
be
true.
That's like giving him I am L. Or I am Kira.
Yeah, and then I didn't have anything.
You're fine. It's, I don't know. There's just so much stipulation and theories you can throw out about the show, and it's just like you can talk about them and it's awesome, but it's just so hard to back it up with any type of facts or evidence. It's just such a fantastic show to really provoke thought about stuff.
I do. Okay, so on another note on Rem's death, I think Light could have just gotten away scot-free at that point. Because after Rem kills L and Watari, Light could have just written down all of the other task force members' names and then just written dies in a fire that didn't leave a trace of the body. And so the whole task force goes up in flames and then he just walks away. So they think that everyone in the task force died in a fire at the same time. So that would clear L, Watari, all the rest of the task force members, and they would think that Light is dead. So then he could just go on being Kira. And
the only thing he'd have to give up is contact with his family.
Yeah. Which really, as you see towards the end of the series,
Yeah.
he really just doesn't
He
care
wouldn't
about
have
his
cared.
family. Because, yeah, the only reason he doesn't kill Sayu is because only the task force knows. And then he considers killing his dad as well. So, I mean, to me it seems like he could have just walked away at that
Yeah.
point, but I don't know. Maybe it's his god complex.
You know, as crazy as it sounds, because after seeing the scene where Light holds L as he's dying, I always wondered if L could have ever pulled that stunt where he faked having a heart attack and Light to come over and try that and be like, "Oh, okay." Like, if that ever happened, I don't know, maybe he could have been caught right there and that would have been it, but, like, I'm surprised that never ran through L's mind about pretending to have a heart attack. And see the reaction of Light, because
Well, I
you know
mean,
how much he
feels-
loves to provoke him and try to figure stuff out. I mean, that seemed like a pretty obvious thing he could try, especially how Light reacted with smiling over him as he died.
Well, yeah, but Light would have just been really, really confused if he hadn't written his name down or written
True.
anything down. So I think I don't think that really would have helped. L would have just fallen over in his chair, and then everyone kind of stares at him.
Yeah, the only way he would have known to predict that is if he knew Rem's relationship to Misa, which he didn't know.
But Light does love to
Well,
win. I wouldn't put him past him to rub it in his face at the very end, because he wants to let him know that he is Kira at any waking moment that he has a chance. That whenever he dies.
I mean, you could almost make a drinking game out of how many times Light says "I won."
He has no hesitation to admit that he is victorious in what he's done, because he wants to be L with all his passion.
I've
And
won.
at the very
won.
end, if he would have just waited 2 more seconds for the first guy to start having a heart attack, come on.
Yeah.
Hey, I've got a question.
Yeah. All right.
So at the very beginning
Shoot.
of the show, Ryuk tells Light that how this whole thing ends is with Ryuk writing Light's name in his death note, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that just because Ryuk's that kind of guy, or is that part of the rules as Light being the first person to touch the death note?
They say
Okay,
it's a
so
rule,
that you can die from natural causes.
I believe.
Okay, so it being a rule though, is it specifically a rule that it's just because he was the first person to touch it, or is it because he had ownership of Ryuk's notebook?
Ryuk says it's because he was the first person to touch it.
Okay, well then that
So
takes out my question. Because I was going to say, whenever they do the exchange in the woods and change ownerships of whose notebooks, which Shinigami is attached to which notebook,
mm-hmm.
if it was just because Light was attached to, or Ryuk was attached to Light's notebook, he could have just switched it because Ryuk was never helpful to him, and Rim was a lot more willing to play with him as long as Misa was happy. Just like get rid of Ryuk altogether and just roll with Rim, because as long as Misa was happy, Rim cooperated.
Well, I mean, Ryuk was actually gone for a long time.
Well, that's true too.
So until he got Misa to dig it back up in the woods, Ryuk was in the Shinigami realm for about a year, or not a year. It was a couple months.
Wait, did we ever see him go to the Shinigami realm?
No,
They
but he
didn't
makes a
show
comment
it
when he comes back.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because when Light and Misa are being held by L in prison cells,
Right.
Neither of them own the Death Note that Ryuk owns. So, but I did have a curious question about that rule where the first person to pick it up is going to be written in the note of the Shinigami who dropped it.
Right.
Most of the I would think the typical situation in which a Death Note gets dropped into the world would be that it got dropped and then the Shinigami doesn't have one. So I don't know how they're going to write their name in their own Death Note when it's owned by a human.
Yeah.
That
So
could
that-
just be
that
Ryuk's
was-
rule then.
I don't think it was an actual official rule. I think it was
Oh.
just Ryuk's, this is how this ends, let me tell you now,
It's-
because I feel
it's-
like it.
Yeah, it's the bet they made.
Yeah.
Right.
I bet you can't be entertaining, and if you are, I'm going to kill you.
Right.
Otherwise, if you are entertaining, then I'll stick around until you die of natural causes and then head home.
Yeah.
Well, because my other thing is how Light could have made this a lot easier for himself is once L enters the picture and does his whole fake I'm L on TV and gets Light to bite on that one, and then L figures out that he's in Japan and what region and whatnot. I think if it wasn't for Ryuk being all, if I'm not entertained, I'll just kill you and move on, Light could have just stopped writing then. Like, take a year off. It's not a big deal. Let L and everything, all the heat calm down, and then go back to it slowly, but, like, do Criminals in America this time, or do Criminals in Italy this time, or wherever. Pick a different region and throw L off of the trail, rather than just challenging him straight up. Now, I realize that he's got his god complex and he can't lose. At least that's what he thinks, so he takes the challenge fully, willingly. But, like, that's much smarter play.
Yeah, no, you're right. As long as they didn't find the Death Note, which they had no idea what they were looking for, so they probably wouldn't have.
Right.
He would have been fine.
Right.
So,
Like,
yeah, no, that's good
you
call.
just stop the killings, you have scared him out of it, but for like a year. Just take a year off, because, I mean, 6 years later you ended up dying, so in hindsight, you could have taken a year off and gotten another 20 years out of the deal. Come on.
Yeah.
So-
There's a lot of ways that he could have played that early that would have changed how the whole rest of it... Like, he could have gotten away early, like you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of that is also him just figuring out what all the exact rules of the Death Note are at
Right.
the same time. So, like he could have obviously, at the start, just gone off there, like, international tyrants or terrorists or something, and not just some guy who showed up on the local news.
Right.
And then he would have been in a much better situation, but he didn't necessarily know the rules or that it even worked at the time.
Right. Well, and he obviously at that point didn't know that someone equally smart or smarter than him was on his case.
Right. So.
Which is why I was saying after that point where L has officially been introduced to Light, at least the idea of him, he knows he's on the case, and he knows he's pretty darn good at his job because he's already narrowed it down to thousands of people instead of millions and billions.
Yeah.
And then his response to that is to tell him, I have access to police information.
Right. Come on, man.
Let me narrow that some more.
Let's make this interesting. I've got a few dozen.
Like, jeez, man.
Well, if we learned anything from the tennis match, it's...
Well, that's true, too.
That tennis match was pointless.
It was.
They're like, it doesn't mean anything. It means everything.
As far as pointless things go in the show, that music number by Misa is actually quite interesting.
Oh, where she's singing in her creepy maid outfit
Yeah.
and people are dying around? Yeah.
That whole episode was so different from the entire show. I really wanted to bring this up.
Yeah.
Because that's the
I agree.
episode where L, he comes down to Earth, how he talks about hearing the bell toll for his death. That's what he's hearing. You see these weird clocks. You get introduced through the show through just a bunch of weird stained glass windows and clocks of like a church that like comes out of nowhere. Misa does her musical number and then it jumps into the show. I was like, that was out of left field. I wasn't sure if that was for an artsy aspect, but man, I mean, I thought it was pretty gripping, but it was just so different.
I didn't notice that those were all in the same episode.
Yeah,
but
it was just
that makes sense.
It was just the weirdest episode because it was like they took time out of the show, out of its complete seriousness, out of all the detective work, and it was like, here's a bunch of just random stuff that just somehow were all artistic in their own way, but that just played into the show, into under each character, but we never saw that part of them.
Remember how you're going to sleep well tonight? Here, think of this.
Was that right before Elle died?
Yeah, that was the
Yeah.
episode before Elle died. Or that was
Okay.
the one of him dying.
It could have just been that, you know, they started out differently so that you're put off and maybe in some way you know that something's going to happen.
Yeah, it was
I
kind
don't
of
know.
it
I
felt like
honestly don't remember it happening.
it felt like the introduction to the Nier arc is what it was.
Oh.
Because like it introduced, like, it showed Misa in this new light, how she's like, oh, I'm taking over for Kira, I'm going to be even more helpful now. And it took over for L saying goodbye to the show, kind of. He's like, I'm leaving now, in this sense, that's what it was, and it was just kind of taking off this really, put a real damper on everything. Made it seem just kind of eerie and dark about it right before introducing the death of such a, I think, of a loved character of that L was. And I guess I can't forget about Watari dying too, because I mean he was crucial throughout the entire show. Yeah, I don't know. That was just an interesting thing I saw when rewatching. It was just how different that entire episode was.
And then you get Nier.
Yeah, my opinion went downhill from there. But hey, as it is. But that stuff, it's not something I disliked, but it was something I think I actually enjoyed after looking back and thinking about it. Because it wasn't something I'm pretty sure there was no musical number in the manga. Pretty sure. I'd have to go back and reread.
Well, that would be really hard to convey.
Yeah. I mean,
So,
find a way.
life, it finds a way. Death Note, it finds a way.
Yeah.
I have a minor. It's really minor, but it's a complaint I have on Light's part in logic in one area. This is in episode 28. It's right before Light's dad, Soichiro, makes the ideal and ends up dying. Light does this little exchange in Misa's room with Rem's, Death Note, Jealouses, and Ryuk and Misa. So Light it starts out Light has ownership of Rem's notebook and Misa has ownership of Jealous. And Light gives up Rem's notebook to Ryuk, and then borrows Jealouses so that he keeps his memory. but he's not an owner of any Death Note.
Is that the one where he has to keep it on his person?
Yes,
Okay.
or he forgets. And what he should have done was borrowed Jealous's Death Note, given up ownership of Rems to Misa, and then borrowed Rems and given up ownership of Jealous to Ryuk. So now Misa's the owner of Rems, and it has to stay in contact with Light, and then Ryuk has Jealouses, because he ends up giving Jealouses to Mikami later, but as it stands at the end of that transaction, the way they do it in the show, the two Death Notes are switched, meaning that Light has on him the notebook of the second Kira, and if he wants to give it away, he needs to do that exact same trade in reverse again in order to give the Jealous's Death Note to Mikami. But it does end up happening off screen because he does end up with Jealous's notebook. But in the time period where he wants to have his lifespan appear above his head so his dad can confirm that he's not the owner of the Death Note, it's really risky because at any point in time they can find the second Kira's notebook on him. And if he kept Rems on him, Rems didn't have... It was just a black notebook.
Yeah.
Well, it had Watari and L, but you're right, it wouldn't have had the hundreds of thousands of names that
are easily confirmable.
So you could also tear those out.
That's true.
That's true. You could, yeah. So I mean,
does it ever show where Rim wrote their name?
No, but
okay, so he most likely got rid of it, or I don't know.
I don't think they ever show you inside of Rim's notebook.
I don't think so.
No, they don't. Which makes me angry. I want to know.
I guess, yeah, if they would have, we would have definitely known L's name.
It's a really minor thing, but it just seems like you could have taken the extra 3 seconds to make sure that you're not going to end up with the second Kira's notebook on you at all times for a few days. But anyway.
Well, didn't he have to be touching it to retain his memory?
Yeah, but it could have been any Death Note that he was once the owner of. That's just a nitpicky point. Because they actually do end up doing that trade later because Mikami does end up with Jealous's Death Note. So
that also is something really interesting about this anime. If you watch it with someone else, you can sit down and track the notebooks.
It's hard.
It's a fun couple minutes.
I have more logic quandaries about the anime if you'd like me to just jump into another one.
Sure, go for another one.
Okay, so this is one that is explained by the manga, but is not explained very well by the anime. When Light first meets Takeda in her hotel room, and Mikami's on the phone as Kira, the conversation Light has, so the room's bugged, and he's talking to Mikami as Kira, and he's trying to prove to Mikami that he is Kira. He writes a note down saying that he needs to remove all the wiretaps, and the task force is like, well, Light says it, I guess we just gotta do it now. And it seems like a huge plot hole because they suspect him of being Kira at that point, but at least in the manga, obviously I can't read Japanese, so I don't entirely know what it said in the show, but without context, that's super suspicious. But in the manga, the note says that Kira wants Takeda's bodyguards to search for bugs. So then they're like, oh, we gotta remove him, otherwise they're gonna kill Light, and we don't know that he's Kira yet. So that at least makes them not idiots.
Yeah.
But
I mean, as close as the manga and anime, where there's, like you said, there's little tiny things in the manga that help support the show that wasn't really shown in the show so much.
Yeah. Another thing that bugged me was how Nier decides to follow Mikami is so stupid. Because he's like, I need to find someone who's gonna support Kira and would know Takeda? This guy who was on her show once. That seems right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the way they displayed it in the show was he was watching all of these different news channels on his 17 monitors, and then he's just like, that guy.
Uh-huh.
And he'd probably been watching and scanning through all this stuff, but the way they displayed it was just like, it's him, and I know because I'm Nier.
I'm Nier, and I'm omniscient.
Yeah. The Dice Castle gives me my powers.
And in the manga, it's not much better. He says he showed up on 2 episodes of 2 different shows that supported Kira. and he said that should... I'm like, there's gotta be so many people who did that.
Yeah.
Because they have audiences full of these kinds of shows every day, so there's no real justification for how he picks him, but I think there's a way that they could have written it that easily resolves it, is that whenever Light and Takada are in a hotel room together, she calls Mikami, and they know she has contact with Mikami. They don't know who he is necessarily, but they know she's contacting a third party. So it wouldn't be that hard to find her phone record, and then you could find Mikami. And they do say that, Takada's phone was untraceable, but that call's gotta go through a switch somewhere, or it has to make a connection somewhere, and that could have been hacked into. I don't know. I feel like that's an easy way to resolve that situation, and they're just like, no, he needs to be the guy on that TV right there.
Yeah.
So. Also, if Mikami had picked anyone who wasn't Takada, it would have been really hard for Light to come in contact with them. I'm sure he would have found a way around it because Light's like super smart, but it seems a little lazy on the part of the writing to say, oh, it just happened to be this coincidence that he could just have, it's someone in his phone book, like, or in his address book. I don't know, that seemed a little far-fetched to me.
Yeah, especially because she, like, when we first met her, when he was in college, she never expressed any interest in the Kira case, like, at all. So, like, maybe if you had planted that seed at the beginning, then it would have seemed more reasonable, but...
Well, Mikami's relationship with her had shown that she was kind of a supporter of Kira.
Right.
So
but,
that's
like,
why he chose her.
The audience,
yeah.
Like, it's just like, oh yeah, I remember her from 12 episodes ago. She sat next to him in class, and Misa didn't like her. And that was it.
Well, and that's the part that bugs me, is not that how Mikami chose her, but the fact that she just happened to be someone Light knew. And then, and then later, Nier uses that as evidence to show that Light is Kira. It's like, it's not related, Nier. Shut up.
Yeah, if anything, he would have chosen someone he didn't know.
Yeah.
Just so many annoying little points like that. Oh, God.
Nier does that a couple times where he's like, oh, there's this coincidence that implicates Light, and it was completely out of his control. That's evidence.
Yeah.
Well, but I think at the same time, he was also, from the very get-go, he was basing his initial theory was that the second L was Kira.
Mm-hmm.
And since he fairly quickly discovers that the 13-day rule isn't a real rule through the acts of Mello, then the actual L already thought Light was Kira. So what else would he do besides follow with his mentor's thinking?
Yeah.
Especially after the one thing that was proving Light innocent is now proven to be fake.
Yeah, why you could follow up on that and just make it... Yeah, there's just straight up... It's a great lead.
On that same note, I think this is a good case to make why Light should have lost. Because, okay, so look at this from the task force perspective. L dies, right? And then some kid shows up, and he says, I know L is dead, I know that the Death Note exists, and they later find him to come from the same orphanage as L, where they could at least feasibly have found out L's real name. And Light never even suggests, hey guys, I think this guy might be Kira, because he had a way to know L's name, and he knew that I wasn't, he had information that L was dead, which was something that was really kept secret by them.
Yeah.
And then he knows about the existence of the Death Note, which, once again, as far as they knew, didn't exist outside of the task force. Like, why would you not say, this kid's Kira? And at least at that point, you would, if you don't have, unshakable faith in Light, you at least suspect Nier enough not to leak him information.
I guess, yeah, he definitely could have posed Nier as an enemy.
It would have been
there.
so easy.
It would have been. I mean, he could have also... There could have been ways going along that route, Nier could have tried to also prove his innocence. There could have been ways, but at least it would have given Light a lot longer time to probably do what he was gonna do.
Well, I mean, and Nier got a lot of information from Aizawa, and if Light could have done anything to shake his confidence in him, I mean, that would have been a bonus.
Yeah.
Because L tried implicated Light for a really long time, so they were kind of on shaky-ish ground. But then, when Soichiro dies, he confirms that Light doesn't own a Death Note, and then Nier shows up and is like, oh, well, no, Nier showed up before then. But still, Nier's then implicating him, reinforcing the same implication that L had, and Light could have used that explanation along with the fact that his dad confirmed that he didn't own a Death Note, which is the most trusted person on the task force. And then no one ever mentions that again, which is really dumb. But then two, those things together should have made him almost like impossible of being Kira in the task force eyes. And no one played either of those two angles, and I thought that was really kind of dumb.
Yeah.
Right, and the same kind of thing happens at the very end. Light, 1 is stupid and claims his victory 1 second too early. But if he hadn't done that, he still could have potentially played it off, because at that point, Nier, going off of all of your information beforehand, Nier could have still been Kira, and there was no proof that he didn't hire Mikami to write some names in a fake notebook and then walk in and call Light God. Like, that could have been faked. And Light just
didn't say a thing.
Blew it, and
Yep.
then he couldn't recover fast enough. And yeah. But at the beginning, when you mentioned, I think that would have been a better time to do it. But he still could have tried to regain his footing there at the very end if he hadn't gloated too early.
Yeah, I mean, if nothing else, he could have convinced Matsuda.
Yeah, his ego always tends to get in the way a bit.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But also that's what makes Light just so lovable in a sense, because his ego is just a huge part of his personality. I think that it's just really, something about him that really makes him really try to personify a powerful god in a sense.
It really is his down. It's his driving character trait, and it's also his downfall.
Because
yeah. A quick note that I want to address that is a real big complaint on the internet. In the anime, Nier seems to out of nowhere know the rules for the Death Note. Like, he's like, oh, the 13-day rule is false, and he's like,
Oh, right.
Because Mello says one of the rules is false. And he's like, oh, it must be the 13-day rule. It's like, well, where did you even know the rules in the first place? And in the manga, Light trades the rules for Mello's identity when the director is kidnapped of the MPA.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. It's like a 4-second conversation that already existed in the manga, and they could have included it and filled a major plot hole. But they didn't. I don't know why. But
to make Nier more hated, as he is portrayed as some omniscient little kid. Or, I mean, he's 18 actually, not a little kid.
Well, the author even came out and said that Nier is his favorite character. Whatever that means.
Hey, props to this guy for writing an amazing plot, but unprops for him writing this character that just... I don't know. I mean, maybe there's a lot of people out there who like him, but I mean, as we share maybe a consensus of the fact that we did not enjoy Nier, especially as Jason pointed out how he tries to fill L's slot when personally I really loved L.
Yeah, I feel like he would have been better received if he had just been his own character and not tried to redo L.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, I did like the point that Oliver made where Nier and Mello were, together were L.
Yeah.
I like how that works, but I didn't like how it ended up working in the show.
Yeah.
Okay, so I delved into the Reddit for Death Note, which can be a very dangerous thing because a lot of these people are really hostile if you don't like the end of the show. But there was one guy who asked some questions, and there's three ways that they came up with that Light could have won the confrontation with Nier at the end. So at the end, both Light and Nier were expecting Mikami to show up and write down the names. Light thought it was a real notebook, and Nier knew it was a fake. So someone suggested, well, what if you just didn't have Mikami show up at all? Then there'd be nothing to prove either way.
Yeah.
So, because that's really what both of their plans were contingent on. But if Mikami didn't show up at all, there would have been no evidence to prove either way, because if he didn't write anything down. Or Mikami could have even showed up and then run away after looking at everyone's names.
Right, that's what I thought he should have done.
Yeah.
I think that was one of Light's flaws there. Is he was overly confident, I get that, and as the show goes on, he becomes more and more cocky.
Mhm.
But to plan for every situation, like, dude, maybe expect that you might be wrong for once. Like, it's gonna happen eventually. So don't tell Mikami to come inside after he writes the names down. Just run away, because after that it's like, okay, so somebody did show up, apparently wrote our names down, and nothing happened. Now, whose names were written down? Well, that's a great question.
Yeah. Or he could have, before he put the death note in the bank vault for the first time, Mikami could have taken like a page and just kept it with him all the time. Because at the point at which he told him to take it to the bank, this was the scenario that Light was trying to play out. So if you kept that one piece on you the whole time, and that day you wrote down a confirmable death, and then went to there, and then wrote it on the rest of one piece of paper, then you're done.
Yeah, Light should have definitely had watches made for every Kira involved in the show.
And then my favorite suggestion was have Mikami show up with a fake notebook that he made that Light thought that they replaced anyway with another fake notebook, and then write down everyone's name except for Aizawa. I thought that one was great.
Pin the whole thing on Aizawa?
Yeah. Or my thoughts were, if he wanted to go with the Nier angle, as I pointed out earlier, he could have write him down everyone but Nier's name. But I thought that was hilarious, because then just Aizawa's the fall guy.
Well, I think it'd be a little bit funnier, but totally unbelievable if Matsuda was the fall guy.
Yes.
Yeah, I think you could have picked anyone but Matsuda, and it would have been believable.
Well,
right.
The angle you can play with Aizawa is that Aizawa's been quote-unquote leaking information to Nier's team, so then if he wants to, you could say that he's been playing both sides, essentially. And still, Aizawa is
more believable.
Yeah, and Aizawa was the most suspicious of Light on the team, so
Right.
pinning it on Aizawa would have been great. It would have been hilarious.
So in that scenario, would Mikami have written it down in the real notebook and then also the fake notebook?
No, so he would have never gone to the bank to pick up what he thought was the real notebook.
Okay, so he wasn't trying to kill anyone at that point at all.
Yeah, exactly. It would be playing into Nier's plan.
Okay. See, I feel like Light wouldn't have given up the chance to kill everyone there, but he could have brought in the fake notebook as well, and so he in the quote-unquote real notebook, the one that Light thinks is real but Nier knows is fake, he has him put the names that he actually wants to kill, so everyone but Light, and then in the one that they both know is fake, put everyone's name but Aizawa or but Nier, and then in the event that no one dies, where Light got outplayed, then Mikami just switches the notebooks real quick and shows that, hey, Aizawa was the only one that didn't get written down. He's Kira.
Or he could just drop the notebook and run away, having seen everyone's faces and names, and left the incriminating evidence on Aizawa.
Yeah, but he just saw God and he wanted to meet him. So you gotta think crazy.
So with that in mind, that Light could have played it that way, the epilogue of the manga has a great solution to all of these problems.
Okay.
It doesn't address the fact that Light could have just killed off the task force after L died, but other than that, the person who actually comes up with the theory is Matsuda, which makes it even better. It's that, okay, so in the end, it's a year later, it's a year after all this happened, and Matsuda's talking to Ide, and he suspects that Nier... So Mello's deal was that he thought that Nier didn't think about a fake notebook existing. So he went and captured Takeda so that Mikami would go to the real notebook to kill Takeda. And then that would tell Nier, oh, there's a fake notebook. Good thing Mello pointed that out, otherwise we're all gonna die. Well, Matsuda's theory is that Nier actually thought about a fake notebook existing, so he leaked the information to Mello through Lydner so that Mello would then kidnap Takeda and reveal where the real notebook is. And then once he got the real notebook, like he did in the show, he would write Nier wrote Mikami's name in the Death Note and told him to bring what he thought was the Death Note to Light, but don't test it, and then write down everyone but Light Yagami's name.
Huh.
Which makes Nier like this, because in the manga, Mikami actually dies a little differently than they do in the show. In the show, he stabs himself and kills himself after he sees Light going down. In the manga, he actually denounces Light as God and says, "You're not God, you're just a stupid idiot." And then 10 days later, in jail, he goes crazy and dies, which could be something that Nier could have written in the Death Note and said, oh, he brings this fake Death Note, writes everyone but Light Yagami's names, gets arrested, and then goes crazy and dies. And so, it also says that after they resolved the situation, Nier burned the Death Note, which would have burned the incriminating evidence that showed that Nier had written Mikami's name in the Death Note. And the reason that the car ride that Matsuda and Ide are going on is to go to the police force headquarters, and they just got a phone call from Nier to take down a mafia drug deal. And this is my own twist on it, but I suspect that if you want a really like super twist ending, all the remaining task force members who knew about the Death Note are showing up for this drug deal. And it's taking place at the same warehouse where they caught Light. And my twist ending is that Nier actually doesn't trust them not to reveal the existence of the notebook, didn't burn it, and plans on killing all of them at the warehouse to remove all knowledge of the notebook from the world. So that's my crazy theory.
Okay, I agree with everything there, but he wouldn't have to have not burned the notebook.
We just kept the page, really.
Well, no, if he still has a notebook, he knows all of the people, so he can just write their names down from anywhere. If he did get rid of the notebook like it said, then maybe he had to lure them to a specific place so that he could kill them the old-fashioned way.
Well, he would want to come up with a means that would make sense for a bunch of police officers to die, and busting up a mafia drug deal would make sense.
Right. I'm saying that they're ambushed there. Like, not killed with Death Note.
Well, but he could be killed with a Death Note. I mean, that would be the safest way to do it, especially with a 10-year-old kid.
He'd be 11 now. It's a year later.
Yeah, whatever. So, anywho, I know that was a bit of a ramble, but I thought that was worth sharing because it implicates that Nier essentially cheated because he controlled Mikami before his death to implicate Light.
Which under that case, if Light hadn't been Kira, then Nier was faking evidence to wrongly convict them.
Yeah, or he could have just told him write down everyone's name except for whoever doesn't have a lifespan.
Right.
In the Death Note. So that he could have still won by having evidence, but it just means that he is the Death Note to do it. So nothing?
I really don't know.
It makes Matsuda cooler.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that Matsuda's the one who figures it out, so nobody believes him. It's as good as getting away with it. But then that makes all of the Light could have won if he had Mikami do this not count, because Nier was already controlling Mikami's actions at that point.
Right.
So that's a true way for Light to have lost.
Yeah. Okay, so real quick, going back on that scenario, the Death Note that Nier had at the very end of the series was the one that Mikami had in his safety deposit box, correct?
Yes, that was Jealous's.
Okay, so how did he get it in your scenario?
Same way, except for the way okay, so if you take the show at face value, Mello figured out that there might be a second notebook.
Okay.
And then captures Takeda so that Nier will find out where it is.
Okay.
In this scenario, Nier figures out there might be a fake notebook and leaks information to Mello so that he'll think that he hasn't figured it out yet, so that he'll make a play so that he can figure out where the real notebook is. So really, in effect, it's the same. He gets the notebook the same way. The difference is that he figured out there was a fake one.
Okay.
So
in both scenarios, the way he gets the notebook is because Mikami jumps the gun and doesn't follow orders.
Exactly.
Okay. It's just whether or not Nier or Mello figured out that there's another notebook.
Right.
Okay.
And then
He
whether or
uses
not
it.
Nier uses it.
Got
Yeah.
it. Okay. No, that's really interesting.
And just as another, in addition to saying that Nier was his favorite character, he said the reason why Nier was his favorite character was because he cheats. And that would be essentially a way for him to cheat to win.
Well, when you have basically the creator writing for you, I mean, how can you not get away with it?
Okay,
I
so
mean,
can I change my my answer for favorite character now?
To
I hope
who?
it's not Nier.
Matsuda?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's still Matsuda. Yeah, because he figured it all out.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding, but that is really cool.
The part
Oh.
that's not implicated in the show directly, or in the manga directly, is that Nier's going to kill the police who knew about the Death Note. But I just like
Right.
that as my own twist ending.
No, it just, with that ending, it makes a lot more sense how he was able to manipulate Mikami. So,
Mhm.
I like that. That's good.
Yeah, because then there was no way for Light to play that scenario where he won,
Right.
which seems like the Nier thing to do, or the Light, or the great detective thing to do. Is you want every option that they have to be a wrong choice.
Right.
So, dun dun dun.
Oliver, you made a point a couple days ago about them making a fake Death Note, and how a Death Note's never going to be out of pages.
Yeah,
Have you found any more on that, or is that still accurate?
I found a solution to that. Okay. So one of the rules of the Death Note is that it doesn't ever run out of pages. You can just keep turning to a new page. That way, Shinigami don't ever need a new Death Note. But they say that before they gave the Death Note to Mikami, they tore out all the pages before. So all the pages that would have essentially implicated Misa and Light were gone before Mikami ever got it.
Okay.
So the only deaths in the Death Note were everything that Mikami had written.
Okay.
So depending
How
on
long did Mikami have the book, though?
that's
the
the
note?
question. I think they say from December to January, but I'm not 100% sure.
Okay.
No. It would have been before that, because Giovanni talks about how he saw him go to the bank for a few months, but I think the earliest they mentioned was October.
Okay.
So it would have been a couple months.
Well, I'm just thinking that if he wrote one page every day, say for 3 months, just
Mhm.
easy math, that's what, 90 pages single-sided? So 45 total pieces of paper. If they were going to make a duplicate Death Note, I think it would be thicker than the one we see. Like the normal Death Note that you see on screen is fairly thin, whereas one of Nier's guys, the one with the black hair that copied the notebook,
Giovanni.
Okay, I was going to say, I can't remember his name. He would have had to copy like all of those 45-some pages and then make the fake notebook. Same thing for Mikami, because he had to make a fake one as well.
Mhm.
So wouldn't those two fake notebooks be a lot thicker than the real one?
Potentially, but that's cutting it close too. Because I mean, I have one in front of me, and it's got more than 45 pages.
Okay.
By far.
Yeah. Well, once they took out the ones that Misa and Light used, that really cuts it down.
Yeah. Yeah.
But before, when those were in there, I'm like, that thing's gonna be a phone book.
Yeah. A phone book of dead criminals.
Yeah. A phone book full of people that won't answer.
Oh, that's depressing.
Yep. Okay. Thanks for clearing that up.
Yeah. I had some points of speculation that aren't necessarily tied to the plot, but just more, I guess it's more of a character study. So it's the idea of, like, who would have Light become without a Death Note? Like, if he never found the Death Note, what would he have done with his life?
I think even before the Death Note, didn't he always want to go into police like his father did?
Yeah.
Investigation?
I think so.
He would have, honestly, he would have been top of the class. He might have, I think, honestly, he could have eventually worked with L if the Death Note never existed. Like Ray Pember's wife did.
Uh-huh.
Because she seemed exceedingly excellent in her line of the work before she left to become a wife. And I think he just would have climbed the ladder pretty high and probably become director or chief of something and gone on to do possible investigations across the world with his genius that he had like L did.
I think he would have become another detective that resembled L.
Yeah.
But I kind of added the thought that Light's more concerned with having a widespread impact than necessarily doing good.
Yeah.
So, like, when he loses his memory, he knows that he's going to have the widest spread impact by catching Kira. That's why he stays around and tries to catch himself when he doesn't have his memory.
Okay.
So, essentially, I think that if he never found it, he'd want
to be a world detective, not somebody in a local area.
Right, but it's not out of goodness. He has this god complex of, I want to be the most well-known and respected person ever.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's any scenario where he's necessarily a good person. There's scenarios where he does good things, but it's out of selfish desire. I don't think it's out of a desire to do good. I don't think he ever really had that.
Yeah, it's hard to say if he did, but yeah, more citing on the fact he probably didn't. Maybe there's a little bit in there, but not enough to influence him.
I think it's more important for the world to stroke his ego for him than.
So you're saying he would have gone into politics?
No, because I don't think he would have.
Then he creates bad things.
He wouldn't have enjoyed trying to convince people he didn't respect to listen to him.
That's very true.
I mean, he'll get that anyway, but he wants to beat the best people, and I think to him that's going to be L.
Yeah.
I mean, he'd probably end up doing what Nier and Mello did to each other. He'd probably do that to L.
Yeah, I could see that.
He could have turned into Mello.
Very much so.
I'm also very interested in what happens after the series ends. So, what happens in a world where people know of a world where Kira had existed, and even like if a new Death Note was introduced, like there's now people in the world who know Death Notes exist. So how would someone in a world where Death Notes are known, how would they use it?
Well, okay, so by the end of the series, the only people that knew about Death Notes were the Task Force and Nier's group, right?
And potentially one suspicious random cop from Higuchi's arrest.
Okay.
Because that's how Nier and Mello say they found out about the notebook's existence.
Okay. So, my guess would be that they would just become rumors and slowly die out. Because, like, once Light dies, no one's using the notebooks anymore, and Kira would essentially leave. I don't know. I feel like the excitement would die down, and then no one would really care until it happened again.
Bad people would still rise up.
Well, yeah, but if the notebooks were all burned until another one is introduced into the world, so the next time Ryuk's bored, I really don't. I feel like people would just forget about it. Like they can't do anything about it now, right? No one can step up and become the next Kira without the notebook, and for them, they don't even know what his power was. But I don't know. That's my opinion. I feel like the world would just forget about it eventually.
Well, my what I think would be interesting would be if someone else did get a Death Note at that point.
Okay.
The knowledge of the Death Note exists somewhere in the world, unless it dies with all the people who know about it right now, which I don't know how likely that is. You think they'd at least entrust one person and say, hey, this is a thing that existed once. Look out for it again.
Right.
Because we are basically at the mercy of the Shinigami who wants to drop it somewhere.
Right. When Matsuda's the police chief, during his last week in office, he picks one of the cops and he's like, okay, kid, I'm going to tell you a story. And
oh, man, I want to see the day Matsuda becomes deputy director.
Yeah, sorry, that's what I meant.
Yeah. But
just on his last day, when he's retiring, he's like, okay, they're not here anymore, but watch out.
Yeah. So I was wondering, I guess, with quote-unquote the good guys having an upper hand to start with, how do you have to conduct yourself in a world when you figure out that, oh, this is how Kira did it, and I have a Death Note now. So I don't know. I thought it'd make it for an interesting show. You could set up a scenario because someone else, namely Light, has laid the groundwork for the fear of what you can do in the world. Or they could not even go the Kira route and just kill random people and try to do it in a way where they don't get caught.
I just saw an entirely mechanized police force. So, robot cops.
RoboCop.
Basically, yeah. Either that or everyone wears a mask everywhere.
That's asking quite a lot.
Yeah.
I'm gonna drop a spoiler here, so
Spoiler.
That's outside of the show of Death Note. If you have not seen the animated movies, there's 2 of them, then skip ahead a few minutes. But I think it's an interesting point for another spin-off series. In the animated movies, it's suggested very, very little that Light is now a Shinigami who lost his memories.
Right,
So,
because the other animated movies, don't they, they're the same story, but just told by Ryuk to another Shinigami, is that correct?
and another Shinigami shows up and says, "I'll trade you an apple for the story you have," and he tells him the story of how Light had a Death Note, and it's implied that Shinigami who's asking about the story is Light. In through certain, it's not directly implicated, but there's a way to view it that way. And if that's true, if Ryuk says if you use the Death Note you can't go to heaven or hell, and
Right.
it'd be really interesting if people who use the Death Note became Shinigami.
That's kind of what I always assumed happened anyway.
Yeah, so I think it'd be interesting to have a story where you see this human get a Death Note and how they use it, and then at the end you see that it's Ryuk's. That this is the story of how Ryuk became a Shinigami. Because I'd like to know Ryuk's story, because really when you look at the scope of the show, he's a really smart character. They say he tricked the old man into giving him Sito's notebook, which everyone all the Shinigamis say is a tough thing to do. And then he crafts the situation so that he gets maximum entertainment without ever putting himself at risk, because he always has his own Death Note. He never risks his Death Note, and he doesn't care enough about anyone to basically kill himself over. So he's there for pure entertainment value, but he also, he's smart enough to follow the situation, but he's just relaxing and having a good time with it. So how he's crafted the situation took a lot of intellect in the first place. So it'd be interesting to see what he did as a human to become a Shinigami, and what he would have done as a human with a Death Note.
And depending on how old he was, or how long he's been a Shinigami, the time period that this takes place in could be, forever ago.
Yeah, it could have been 1400s, it could have been 200 BC, it could have been wherever.
Right.
Yeah.
Also, we had talked about this a little beforehand, and I thought that something that they could do in that would be just throw in things in the background that would make sense once you figure out that this guy is Ryuk. That you're like, I've seen all of this stuff. How did I not get that? There's just always apples in his house, and they're never mentioned, but it's just once you find out that this guy was Ryuk, it suddenly everything makes sense.
You gotta throw in the wicked laugh, though.
Yes.
So
you can make
is actually Ryuk before he's a Shinigami.
no, there's no time travel here. Not yet.
Oh, that
Well,
would hurt.
Shinigami are neither in heaven nor hell, so there's nothing to say that they can't be wherever they want to be at. And Ryuk enjoys being a Shinigami, so to make sure that he's a Shinigami, he goes back to give himself the Death Note.
You just gave the Shinigami time travel powers. I don't
did.
like that. I mean, it doesn't say they don't have it, but
That would stink, though, because then you could go back in time, kill off somebody, and then that accidentally wipes out your family tree.
Whoops.
I don't know that that's an attribute, something I want to attribute to Shinigami, the ability to time travel.
No, definitely not.
I will also mention for anyone who didn't enjoy how the show ended, that the live action movies have a more, I would say, a more satisfying ending. So I'd say they're worth the watch. As far as live action anime goes, they're not the worst.
that's also not hard.
Yeah.
I mean, if I get flack for it, I don't really mind. But honestly, I thought the ending to the show was on point of where it should be, and I enjoyed it.
I just didn't enjoy Nier.
I mean, I don't enjoy Nier, but I'm talking about where with Light dying. I expected that in the end, and I was slightly surprised, and I was kind of taken aback. I mean, the whole plot kind of does that to me, though. It's just the stuff it just throws at you with the complexity of it. Maybe I find it somewhat complex because I could never think ahead of the plot, but how it kind of did it in the end was just I guess it's all right. I was kind of upset, but it took me a while. But I was like, yeah, I guess I'm okay with this.
See, I was thinking that this could be an anime where the bad guy, I guess, where light wins. And, you know, they did set it up to where in, what was it, episode 25, Elle dies? And
Yeah.
if you're watching this week to week when it's coming out, a standard anime is anywhere from 22 to 26 episodes if it only has one season. So this one's a little longer than normal. But they set it up to where that could potentially be the last episode, or, you know, maybe one more that just concludes everything. So you tune in the following week for the last episode that's just like light ruling the world, and it keeps going. So they did have it set up to where you could think that was the end.
That was very smart on their part. That's it for Death Note. Next week, Blake has picked out Overlord for us, so be sure to watch that. And each time we're recording a show, we're going to pick a topic to go a little more in depth about. This week we have the age-old question, why anime? Particularly, what about anime makes it so unique, and why do you like it compared to other media?
Definitely for why I like it. Oh, it's tough. It's just something just like sticks out there to me, and I just enjoy just all the stories behind it because all of them are so unique. And growing up, I don't know, like maybe cartoons did that where as a kid maybe were kind of unique, but like this stuff, I don't know, it's just a lot more interesting. I love the artwork. I love all the music that comes from it. I'm a huge music fan of all the stuff that comes out of it, but I just love it all. And I mean, I like manga too, and I have quite a bit of all kinds of different shows that have come from manga and manga themselves that have yet to be made into animes. I love reading, so it's kind of a mystery to myself as why I like it, but it's just something unique that it just interests all of what I like.
One reason I really like it, especially compared to like normal television shows in America, with anime they can basically do whatever they want. So for Death Note, you know, we got to see Shinigami in Bleach, another big anime. They can do hollows or just, you know, outrageous creatures and stuff, and that doesn't take a lot of funding. Just like imagine how much a week-to-week series of Pokemon would cost if it was live action.
And that's the other thing, is that they're on the same media. The people and the monsters are made with the same media. Whereas if you had a live action Pokemon, there's going to be like CG involved, and so it's going to look weird.
Right.
So that's why, like, you can have Energy Blasts in Dragon Ball Z, and they look more believable because they're in the same medium that the characters are drawn in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly. The boundaries are just limitless. I mean, you could go anywhere and everywhere with anime.
Mm-hmm.
And not everything has to be a cop show. Like, I know we just watched Death Note, where everyone was a cop, but trust me, every anime is not like this.
Most anime,
and it seems like most American television is transferring to either a reality show or cop show, and it's nice to have more options than that.
One of the reasons that I enjoy anime is that it's serial, not episodic. So there's a continuous story going on throughout it, at least most anime. Whereas, like, so what's popular in American television is shows like Modern Family or The Brady Bunch, or, you know, stuff like that. Like, you know, obviously in different periods of time. But The Simpsons, Family Guy. There's no continuous story throughout. Even the cop shows that Jason talked about, like, every once in a while there'll be an episode where a character dies and they just don't show up anymore. But for the most part, a lot of the shows are disconnected. You can watch them in almost any order.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And you know, if you miss 3 episodes of Death Note, particularly episodes 24 through 26, you're gonna have no idea what's going on. So
Elle dyed his hair.
It lets them it lets them go really far into crafting a complex story. And I like another point. I like the character study about it. So it lets them dive into those kind of character studies. So you can see what happens when someone with a god complex gets virtually unlimited power, or you could see what happens when a soldier isn't needed for war anymore in Gundam Wing and stuff like that. It gets into bigger problems than, oh, it was funny that that Jerry hit Tom with a hammer. You know, it's. So that's
right.
what I enjoy. Did you come up with anything, Zach?
Adult cartoons. Not as weird as I made that sound, but I don't know. I guess something along those lines is I'm still just a giant kid, so this is a more, it seems like a lot of anime is a more mature version of stuff that I grew up in my childhood. Other than that, it is nice, as we've been talking about, it is nice to get a break from stereotypical American television where basically an entire show is made up of, each episode is a different one-liner, where, like Oliver said, you don't have to watch all of them in order to understand or still be able to enjoy the show. But yeah, I guess those would probably be the reasons that I chose anime.
Awesome. Alright, well, that's it for the first episode of Senpai Noodles. Next episode, we'll be discussing the first season of Overlord, which is available on Hulu, so be sure to watch it and tune in. Thank you for listening, and if you like the show, be sure to leave us a review on the iTunes Store. You can also email us with your comments and questions at podcast@senpainoodles.com. Tell us what shows you'd like to hear us review, topics you want to discuss, or just say hi. We'll read them all. Also check out our website, senpainoodles.com, where you can find all of our episodes. Until next time, happy watching, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. Hello and welcome. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. No. What?
You killed it.
Oh god. Okay, so I was gonna say, tell me when to be quiet before you start.